what did I do this morning that might have made me feel this way? What did I do yesterday that might have made me feel this way? And not to necessarily look for a big dramatic story. Welcome to the Wisdom of the Body podcast. I'm your host, Heather Grzych. Here, we talk about the profound connection between mind, body, and spirit. Join me and other authors, wellness experts, and everyday individuals talk about the importance of listening to our bodies, trusting our guts, and living in deeper harmony with nature. So, whether you're seeking guidance on your wellness journey or simply looking for inspiration, you're in the right place. We're thrilled to be in the top 3% of podcasts globally. You can find the Wisdom of the Body podcast on Apple, Spotify, and most other places where people listen to podcasts. You can follow by joining my email list at heathergrzych.com or by following me on Instagram at Heather Grzych. That's Heather, Grzych. I know you're going to love this podcast, so take a second right now to subscribe. Is the key to your mental health in your gut? Now, if you've ever had a gut feeling or noticed your stomach tie up in knots when you're stressed, then you already have a sense that your gut and your mind are deeply connected. But this isn't just a poetic way for me to say that. It's not a metaphor, because both ancient Ayurveda and also modern biomedical research point to an intimate relationship between digestion and the mind. But we don't necessarily always have an understanding of the mechanisms of how this works. So let's talk about it Ayurvedically, scientifically, and personally. Starting with Ayurveda, the gut is not just where you process food, it's where you process your entire life and things that come into your life and into your body. Ayurveda sees digestion through the lens of what we call Agni, or your digestive fire. So you have this fire in your body, inside your gut, that processes the things that come inside of that digestive tract and primes them to be ready for you to utilize them or to excrete them. When this Agni is strong, it's like the little fire in our belly, when it's strong, we will digest not only our food, but our experiences and our emotions well. When this Agni is weak, or if it's irregular, say like going up and down and not consistent, what forms is what we call ama, or toxins or undigested matter, things that didn't get properly digested. And they don't get used by the body because they're not in a form that can be used. And they also don't get excreted. And when that happens, this ama, if it sticks around, this improperly digested food experience, et cetera, it can not just cloud your body, but it can also cloud your mind. And the mind in Ayurveda, we look at it through the lens of yoga, actually. So the properties, the mental energies of sattva, rajas, and tamas, these energies that correspond with clarity, activity, and inertia. So sattva is that clarity, rajas is that activity, and tamas is that sense of inertia. When we accumulate ama from poor digestion, what happens is it can lead to an excess of tamas in the body, which is like dullness, depression, or even confusion. And there are a lot of physical symptoms of this as well. And that's why in Ayurvedic mental health treatment, when we work on the level of the mind, one of the first things a practitioner might do is address the gut. We're not therapists. We're not here to get wrapped up in your mental content with you. We are here to work on the body so that the mind has the opportunity to change through working on the body. So an Ayurvedic practitioner might recommend that you eat different foods that will help you digest better, or suggest different herbs that will help you digest better, or different practices that will help you digest better in order to reduce that ama, or to keep all of your channels clear so that you have clarity in your mind and that your body and everything is functioning properly. When this ama accumulates for a long time or in a large amount, we may recommend more involved cleansing therapies, such as panchakarma, which you may or may not have heard of. It's a very elaborate form of cleansing that we do in Ayurveda to get rid of ama and imbalanced doshas in a body. And that has an effect on the mind. Mental clarity starts in the gut, literally and energetically. I don't care how much you meditate. If you are not taking care of your body, you're not going to be able to meditate as well. Your mental state is, and anybody who's ever gone to a meditation retreat and sat for a while, and they become very, very, very aware of everything happening inside their body, they can feel the effect that their diet has on their body. And so the more we cultivate inner awareness through practices like yoga, mindfulness, meditation, then we're going to notice that the mental clarity is really significantly affected by the gut. But let's bring in the modern perspective as well. So this biomedical look, you probably have heard of some concepts that have come up in recent years. I think there was a book that I read 10, 15 years ago called The Second Brain that was written on this topic, or heard people refer to the enteric nervous system, which is the nervous system that exists, neurons that are embedded in the lining of your gastrointestinal tract or your GI tract. And Western science has been doing a lot of research in a big way on this concept in the last 10 years. And this enteric nervous system can operate independently of the spinal cord, and it communicates directly with the brain via the vagus nerve. You probably may have heard of that as well, because that's become a hot topic in the last 10 years as well. And people refer to this whole system here as the gut-brain axis. So there's a way that what goes in your stomach, that the nervous system is detecting information or sending information, and it's basically traveling through the nervous system to the brain via the vagus nerve. And that's looking at it on a neurological level. There's, a whole bunch of other biological processes going on, even beyond the nervous system. But when most people are talking about the gut-brain axis, a lot of times they're talking about this nervous system aspect of it. Now, there's also a neurochemical aspect that people will talk about in biomedicine. There's lots of research now that shows that the serotonin, which is the so-called feel-good neurotransmitter, it's what is a target for a lot of mood disorders, or a lot of the depression drugs and things like that are geared toward improving levels of serotonin in the body. So we now know that a lot of this type of neurotransmitter is produced in the gut and not in the brain. And that the trillions of microbes in your gut, which people will call the microbiome, all the little bugs in your gut, that they actually play an essential role in this, because they're eating things and processing things in the same way that your body is doing that on a macro level. That's happening at a micro level with the microbiome. And certain bacteria can even influence our mood, our anxiety levels, and our cognitive function. So studies actually show that disruptions in the microbiome, say from a poor diet or antibiotics or chronic stress, which so many people have, that can contribute to depression or anxiety or other mental health challenges that people have. And there's a lot more to say about the microbiome, because the microbiome gets affected by your doshas as well, and it gets affected by your behavior. So, topic for another podcast episode. What I want to do, though, is I want to share something that I don't think a lot of people hear a lot, which is sometimes when we feel low or down or off in some way, which everyone does, and some people do more than others, or some people do erratically at times in cycles. Whenever we feel these, we'll call them bad emotions, right? The feel bad emotions. Whenever we feel them and the mind starts immediately looking for a story to explain it. So we all know what feeling sad feels like in our bodies, a heaviness or a slowness to it, literally like down or like dragging. And sometimes that can be confusing. Like, am I out of energy or am I just being pulled down by a lead weight? Some of these feelings can get confusing. But when we feel something off like that, we'll think, oh, what's wrong with me? Or what in my life is making me feel this way? And often, instead of looking at what we did in the last few minutes or the hours or days, which will affect our state as we feel it at this moment, we go even deeper than that. We start reaching for big dramatic stories or traumas from years ago, or mistakes that we made, or things that happened to us that sucked. And yes, those things are real, and we've all had painful experiences. But why is it that our minds go backwards in time, sometimes years back, instead of staying with what's more recent and more present? What is in the here and now? What did I do this morning that might have made me feel this way? What did I do yesterday that might have made me feel this way? And not to necessarily look for a big dramatic story, but it could literally be like something purely physiological. And I think women really feel this with their menstrual cycles, with the hormonal surges and drops. And we read a lot into those changes. And, some people get very depressed at certain phases of their cycle. And when we realize that there's a physiological shift that's happened, if we can focus on the physiological and not look for the big, deep, dark secret or whatever that might be the real reason we feel this way, it's a much more actionable and focused and practical way of dealing with how we deal with our bodies. I want to share a story. Also, speaking of the gut, a lot of people have digestive issues. I had a client that had IBS for years and years and years by the time I met her. We worked together actually for a long time, and she had a really hard time talking about certain things. And, whenever I would touch upon a certain area, she would really try to avoid certain conversations. And then, we noticed that she was getting IBS at certain times, and it was getting triggered by this one very specific activity. And one day she just finally admitted that her bouts of needing to run to the bathroom were preceded by having a thought about a traumatizing event from her childhood, and then spiraling into a bunch of related fears and anxieties to protect her from having to experience that traumatic event from childhood again. Now, the mind travels, the body responds to that. The nervous system, the muscles, and the cardiovascular system, and the visceral organs, the things that squirt stuff into your digestive tract. So your thoughts that you have, they're eliciting physiological responses. And those thoughts can either help you or harm you. And this is one of the ways I think Ayurveda really gives a lens into how emotions, the mind, and the body are all connected. One of the most important realizations I've seen people make on their path to greater self-mastery is this: you let your mind go there. You let your mind go there. You didn't have to. You read into what was happening instead of just observing it. You interpreted something as something. You could have said, oh, I feel this way because I ate too much cheesecake yesterday, and now my body feels heavy. My gut feels sluggish. My microbes are a little off. My body is just reading that information and sending it to my brain. Not like, oh, I, was sad because my dog died when I was 7. And that's not what's making you sad now. Yes, that's what's making you sad now once you think of it. But if you're looking for these old things, instead of just being with like, well, what actually happened to my physiology right now that might have made me feel this way? That's a pattern that has to be caught, that pattern. And when we catch this pattern, we create a moment of freedom, a moment where we could choose where to place our mind. And yes, it definitely takes practice, because first comes the realization, then comes this cultivation of awareness, and then comes the skill of redirecting the mind instead of letting it spiral into the past. But now that I've pointed it out that it might just be a physiological thing, You know it now that it's possible. It's just something physiological. It could literally just be physics. So don't forget that. What does it mean for you though? So if you're struggling with mood swings or anxiety or depression, then consider this an invitation to start with your gut. This isn't some like quick fix thing I'm trying to do here. This is a deep act of self-respect. Your gut is not just a food tube. It's an ecosystem. It's a communicator and a processor of life. So here are just a few suggestions. And obviously, if you have a problem in your life right now, make changes and implement things in your life that will, talk about them, how you feel, make plans. There are various things that you can do to change the conditions that make you feel horrible. So I'm not saying that people don't actually have things that are affecting them psychologically and emotionally in the moment. But if you are one of these people that feels off and then looks for, oh, why is this happening to me? And then goes back into all these old stories, then here are the suggestions for you. So in general, eat mindfully. And if you're dealing with especially erratic mood type things, you'll favor mild seasonal foods that are easy to digest, that are appropriate for your doshas. Learn about your doshas and what foods are appropriate for you. Avoid overeating or eating when you're stressed. Just really good mindful behaviors. And I'll say this, don't eat intuitively. If you're out of balance, don't eat intuitively. That might sound weird, but don't get into the intuitive eating thing, because if you're suffering with an imbalance, you might actually not be able to trust your intuition. Though few people will admit that their intuition has told them to do something harmful. It happens. So instead of intuitive eating, focus on structured eating. Make a plan for your meals and be consistent with that. And support your microbiome. So there are lots of things that you can do to support your Agni and your microbiome, to strengthen your processing capacity. Things like pickled ginger is one of my favorites, or kimchi, which is very heating and not for everybody. But these are the examples of things that can strengthen your, digestive property or digestive capacity. And then simplify your inputs, both your diet and your media consumption. So like everything that comes into your senses is food, not just the food that you eat. So too much information, just like too much food, can be really hard to digest. So just simplify your inputs. That's one of the reasons that meditation is so beneficial for health, is just really tuning in and letting the senses rest and being really simple. And don't make things complicated for your body to process. And build in daily rhythms. Like this thing, don't intuitively eat structured, right? Have a structured approach to it. Same thing with like eating. So eating, do the structure with the eating. Also the same thing with sleeping. Have a structure to your sleeping. Your body loves routine. It's going to operate in a more consistent way that you can trust if you give it the type of rhythm that will allow it to do that. So build in daily routines and rhythms where you do certain things at the same time every day, so your body starts to feel things have become more predictable and stable. And get into nature, because your body loves it and your mind needs it. So nature is such a beautiful cure for so many things. And maybe the most Ayurvedic thing that you could do is listen. Listen to your body, listen to your gut, and listen to your heart, even when that's uncomfortable. When we tune into the gut, not just as a digestive system, but as a source of this deep, deep, deep inner knowing, we can become in tuned to what we really need. We'll stop outsourcing our mental health entirely to medications or diagnoses and begin reclaiming a sense of control, a sense of mastery, and trust in how we nourish ourselves. So yes, maybe the key to unlocking your mental health is really in your gut, or at least it's a good place to start looking. Thanks for joining me today. And if this episode resonated with you, share it with someone you care about. Take care of your gut. The rest will often follow. Thank you for dropping in today. Don't forget to subscribe and give us a rating. To learn more about the topics shared on this podcast, visit heathergrzych.com. That's Heather, GRZYCH.com. And meet me here next time on the Wisdom of the Body.